Good evening and welcome to our first men's basketball roundtable here at the Daily Northwestern. I'm Colin Becht and I'm joined by our men's basketball beat writers, Josh Walfish and Dan Ryan. The men's basketball team certainly in a bit of a rough patch right now. They've lost their past 3 straight and 7 of their past 9. And so Dan, let's start with the offense. What's it going to take to, you saw it against Purdue yesterday. They couldn't get that last basket to get the win. What's the offense need to do to contribute more?
I think for starters, you have to look at the fact that there really is no third scoring option behind Sherman and Crawford. If those two do not have their typical great games, the offense really struggles. And you can also point it back to the lack of a low post player. I mean, they don't have anybody inside who scares anybody. And if they're not shooting well from 3, and if Sherman and Crawford are not having their typical great games, then they can't do it on offense.
They still have, a lot of teams, when you have the Big Ten's leading scorer, that's probably going to be enough to produce a few more wins than they've done so. So what's, obviously on the defensive side of the ball, things aren't going probably that's maybe the bigger flaw of the team. Josh, what's going on with the defense?
They're schizophrenic almost, because I feel as though when the man-to-man's working, sometimes they go into the 1-3-1, the 1-3-1's working, they go to the man-to-man. So I feel as though, the team and Bill Carmody in general, they have to look at what's working for each individual opponent. Against Michigan State, it was the man-to-man defense. But Purdue was able to really rip up that man-to-man defense and struggle against the 1-3-1. But yet you saw at crucial times, Northwestern was still in the man-to-man defense. So if they can figure out which defense suits best for which game, I feel as though they'll do a better job of locking down opponents.
And that Purdue game was certainly a big heartbreaker for the Cats' tournament hopes, as they lost their 3rd game of the season, 0-3 now in games decided by 2 points or less. So Dan, we've seen them, especially with the Michigan game, the Illinois game, and now with Purdue, where they just haven't been able to close out games in the clutch. So what's going on in those last-second situations?
I think it comes down really to 2 things. I think you should have to look at Carmody's decision-making. Against Purdue, they had an extra timeout that he could have used. He could have set them up, at a play closer to the basket as opposed to making them run full court and clearly that did not work out. I mean, you've got to look at their mental toughness. I mean, it's been a trend now. It's happened enough to where you have to wonder if, this is just a team that just is one of those just going to struggle closing teams out.
And one of the main questions, obviously, with the Northwestern basketball team is, will this finally be the year when they make a tournament? Joe Lunardi had them in his projected bracket earlier this year. They've since dropped out. Josh, what do they need to do in the second half of the Big Ten season to get themselves back into the big dance?
I mean, besides winning 7 more Big Ten games, getting to 9 wins, which I think is pretty much a guarantee they'll get in, it's going to come down to winning at home. They have games against Michigan. They were close in Ann Arbor. They got games against Iowa. They have to play Nebraska on Thursday. They can close out all their home games, minus Ohio State. I don't know if they're good enough to beat Ohio State at home, but if they can win the rest of those home games, especially with teams struggling on the road, that's going to be key if they're going to try to get to that 9-win plateau.
All right, so guys, we're about 2 months away from Selection Sunday. So in 2 months from now, will the Cats be dancing?
They will not. I think that the last 3 games are more indicative of where this team is at than their winning against Michigan State. I do not see them in the tournament.
What about you, Josh?
This is a tournament team. Unfortunately, for the 4th straight year, it is a national invitational tournament team, not the NCAA tournament. I think, as Dan said, some of these losses, especially these close losses, are going to come back to haunt them when they're sitting on the bubble.
Well, there you have it. It's going to be yet another year where the Cats are on the outside looking in of the NCAA tournament. For beat writers Josh Walfish and Dan Ryan, I'm Colin Becht. Thanks for watching, and stick to www.dailynorthwestern.com for all your Northwestern sports coverage. Have a good night.